Appropriations Committee. It is the direction of the executive in terms of where the retro money that we have needs to go so that we take care of our economy. And I'm saying so because in the previous budget cycles, Honorable Speaker, we have always taken up to the last comma of what is presented to the Budget and Appropriations Committee by the departmental committees. And we consult, Honorable Speaker. I make a point of also personally consulting with the chairs so that any change that is happening is not below the carpet. Because the monies we are dealing with, the departmental chair, Honorable Speaker, is my colleague. The member of a departmental committee is my colleague. It's not that we know better than them. It's only that sometimes when resources are so scarce, there are some specific areas that needs to be funded. And in all honesty, sometimes we have to give that leverage to the executive because they spared us. The backstop's there. And I'm being honest, Honorable Speaker, because this House has been very harmonious, and that harmony is important. But beyond now the cuts, Honorable Speaker, there are some things through the consultations with the National Treasury, departmental chairs, the members of parliament, the executive, there are areas, even if there are cuts, we decided they must not suffer a cut, Honorable Speaker. Because this country is in a place besieged. You know, Honorable Speaker, one of the tenets of economic growth, one is expansion of government expenditure. Then when you constrain government expenditure, the ramifications of that in the months to come would be a contraction of the economy. And therefore, whereas we are cutting also, we must also make sure there is enough money floating around, and especially providing liquidity in the economy. But then, Honorable Speaker, we had to really cherry pick these areas, and especially with the consultation with all the stakeholders. One of the areas, Honorable Speaker, education sector continues to take the bulk of the money. Because as a government, we are spending 650 billion to education. And Honorable Speaker, it is important for us to know as a country, Kenya is a democracy. And most of the democracies like Kenya, therefore have what we call an open market economy, where then trade and economic transactions determine the prices of the market. But Honorable Speaker, to be honest to ourselves as Kenya, when we look at the weight of what the government needs to spend, the issue of Kenya being a market economy and a competitive economy therefore adds when the government starts. Because from where the government starts, Honorable Speaker, Kenya is a socialist state. It's social because, Honorable Speaker, you measure that by the size of government expenditure. 650 billion goes into education. Honorable Speaker, sometimes we wonder, why do we have stored projects, etc., etc. Some of it is based on the responsibilities that the government has to conduct. One would ask, but the government has been doing these duties nevertheless. But that is not the fact, Honorable Speaker. When this government took over, the other governments had been afraid to implement, for example, CBC. When we talk about CBC, it's not just an education system. It is also a huge expenditure line. Because every learner in JSS, Honorable Speaker, is capitalized by government to a tune of over 10,000 Kenya shillings every year. Was that there before? It was not there before. Honorable Speaker, therefore, the government is spending 650 billion Kenya shillings to education. But what we have made sure that we have safeguarded, and I want to assure the members of parliament here, we have made sure that the monies to confirm the JSS interns, all of them 46,000, has not been cut in the budget. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we have provided the monies for confirmation to permanent and pensionable for the JSS interns, because anything else can wait, but the JSS confirmation, JSS interns confirmation to permanent and pensionable cannot wait. We cannot allow that to wait, Honorable Speaker. Second thing, Honorable Speaker, is in the health sector. We have provided 8 billion shillings because this House passed a law called SHIF. And there are 3 facts that are in there that are very important for the implementation of the universal health coverage. We have provided 8 billion shillings to start working that journey, Honorable Speaker, and seed money for Kenyans to start benefiting from almost free health services, Honorable Speaker, through SHIF, which this House passed. And in that regard also, Honorable Speaker, we have provided Kenya shillings, 3.7 billion Kenya shillings for the confirmation of interns who are in the health sector, Honorable Speaker, for them to be confirmed into permanent and pensionable terms. Honorable Speaker, Kenya, part of the reason why Kenya is largely informal in terms of the nature of our economy is that we are still agrarian. And Honorable Speaker, this is not something to be proud of. When we measure the economy, we measure economy using 2 things. One is economic growth, Honorable Speaker. And in that, Honorable Speaker, we do qualitative and quantitative. What I've been doing is reporting GDP and the rest. That is quantitative, Honorable Speaker. But we also need to look at the other areas around how people are, how the economy is performing qualitatively, Honorable Speaker. And I say so because majority of Kenyans are engaged in farming, in agriculture. It is not something to be proud of because one of the measures of our country growing or economic growth of a country, Honorable Speaker, is having agriculture contributing less to the economy, not more. In fact, one of the definitions of an economy that has grown, of a developed economy, is an economy whose involvement of agriculture in terms of GDP is less than 10%. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, however, we also have to look at where we are. We are a developing country, not a developed one. And therefore, most of the Kenyans are engaged in agriculture. What we have done in agriculture is this, Honorable Speaker. We have provided Kenya shillings 7.5 billion that will go into fertilizer subsidy. And this time, Honorable Speaker, fertilizer subsidy will be both for food crops and also cash crops. The coffee farmers, the tea farmers, the food farm, maize farmers and the rest, Honorable Speaker, will have an opportunity to benefit from that fertilizer subsidy, Honorable Speaker. Second thing, we have provided money for coffee cherry fund, Kenya shillings 3 billion. And Honorable Speaker, we have also provided monies 2 billion to start paying the coffee debts owed to coffee farmers, Honorable Speaker, and coffee societies. Honorable Speaker, we have provided monies for sugar reforms, which we continue, Honorable Speaker, to provide for us to continue supporting our sugar cane farmers. Honorable Speaker, we have provided Kenya shillings 1.5 billion to act as the defense of raw milk prices so that the milk prices, the dairy farmers, can get at least 50 shillings per litre, Honorable Speaker, every now and then, even when there is abundance of the feed, Honorable Speaker. We have also provided, Honorable Speaker, monies, 2 billion shillings that will go into purchase of coolers. There we have a different program before where Kenya was to have this program with Pollard. And therefore Kenya was to provide only 10%, and then Pollard was to give us 95% in terms of loan.
Yeah, some 3 minutes to conclude, Chairperson.
Honorable Speaker, what you have done, Honorable Speaker, is to provide 2 billion Kenya shillings that Kenya government will no longer rely on any other country We want to buy these coolers as government and supply to the farmers of Kenya, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, there was a Maraga task force, Honorable Speaker, that went around the country to look at the situation of our security officers. Security officers are our brothers and sisters, but they continue to live in a manner, Honorable Speaker, that is subhuman. One, because as we know, they don't have a voice, they don't have a union. Honorable Speaker, this House has listened through the Budget Committee to the cries of our security officers, and we have input Kenya shillings, 3.5 billion Kenya shillings for enhancement of salaries for our security officers, Honorable Speaker, in line with the Maraga task force. Honorable Speaker, there are many things we have done, including, Honorable Speaker, monies for aggregation centers, monies for, we have added around 2.5 billion Kenya shillings for aggregation centers. We have added EPZD 1.5 billion Kenya shillings for the factories, Honorable Speaker, that have been ongoing across 6 areas in Kenya, and much more. As I come to the conclusion, I want to thank the Kenyan people. This is a period where we must seize the moment, Honorable Speaker. And one way we are doing to seize the moment, the Kenyan government has over 334 entities, Honorable Speaker. Many of the regulations and the legislations we do in this House, we create new bodies. And Kenyan government continues to enlarge, Honorable Speaker. We create duplication. And in that regard, we have started to walk the talk. And in this budget, Honorable Speaker, we have denied 47 entities monies for operations and maintenance, Honorable Speaker, so that we hood them up, we merge them together so that we continue to have a lean government that is responsive to the needs of the Kenyan people. And Honorable Speaker, that exercise is saving us around 7.9 billion Kenya shillings. Honorable Speaker, at some point we have to ask critical questions in this House. In Muranga, in Taita Taveta, you'll have a Kera engineer. You'll have a Kenha engineer. You'll have a Kura engineer. Honorable Speaker, this House will need to ask very critical questions. And especially when it comes to all these entities. Do you need a Kera engineer, Honorable Mwago in Starehe? Do you need a Kenha engineer in the same place? Do you need a Kura engineer in the same place? Some of those questions, Honorable Speaker, are what we must progressively ask ourselves. And this cuts across all other sectors. The waterworks companies that we have in Kenya, the water industry sector only, has got over 20 entities, Honorable Speaker. We have to ask ourselves, do we need these 20 entities or do we need to scale them down? These are critical questions. They are not in the budget now, but I'm just opening up a debate. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and request the Honorable Mary Emase, who is the Vice Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, to second this motion.
Well said, Chairperson. The Honorable Mary Emase. The Honorable Kanchori.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Memusi.
Memusi, standing in front of me. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to second the motion on the supplementary estimates. From the onset, I rise to second. Honorable Speaker, indeed we are at unprecedented times, because for the first time in our history, we are revising a budget before even implementing it. And we are all aware that this was. I want to start with the phrase that difficult times call for tough decisions. And the collapse of the finance bill and all that has been happening in the country, I think has given us a number of lessons. And even as we were revising the finance bill, we were guided by some of the lessons that we have learned as a House. So we listened and we had to revise this the budget estimates. And Kenyans have told us we need to stay lean, hungry, and responsible. So as the Budget Committee, we have made cuts, not only on the non-essential expenditure, but also on essential expenditure. As you look at the estimates, a number of envisaged programs that cut across all sectors, be it water, roads, electricity, even industrialization, as we've just had, even the Committee on Trade has complained, and all other sectors have suffered cuts. Honorable Speaker, even corporations, 47 of them are receiving only P&E, personal emoluments. There is one parastatal that is not even receiving personal emoluments as they await the restructuring, the mergers, rollovers, or closure for some of them. So, Honorable Speaker, this House was also not spared. Even the Parliamentary Service Commission, we have CPST, the Proposed Training Center, that is ongoing. And we have a number of projects across sectors that have certificates, have also suffered cuts across board. I don't want to go into the details, but I want to mention one key important aspect. It is important that as we are revising this budget, we need to note that we are revising this budget at a time when the country is facing a lot of challenges. Of course, I've mentioned that we've learned lessons. The country is calling for austerity. The country is calling for accountability. And the country is calling for this House to allocate money in a manner that creates opportunities for the young people, among others. So my call is to those accounting officers, all leaders in positions of leadership, of responsibility, that we must appropriate this money prudently in a manner that will give results. All those who've been appointed to administer the appropriation of this money, make sure you help the president to realize the objectives and for Kenyans to be able to see value for their money. Because Kenyans are still watching us and they'll continue to watch to see how this money is utilized for the benefit of Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, the Budget Committee, we've done our bit. We've made the cuts across board. I do not want to repeat the figures, but it is now up to the individuals who are bestowed with the responsibility to oversight all those institutions, the Auditor General, Control of Budget, among others, ESCC. Let each institution play their role. Accounting officers and all of us, committees, so that we make sure Kenyans get value for money which we are appropriating through this revised budget. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I second.
Thank you, honorable members. Order. Order. Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House adopts the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on its consideration of the estimates for financial year 2024-2025, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 23rd July 2024, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution, Section 39 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, and Standing Order number 243, 1, approves a decrease of the current expenditure for financial year 2024-2025 by Kenya shillings 38,896,358,312 in respect of the votes contained in the first schedule. 2, approves a decrease of the total capital expenditure for financial year 2024-2025 by Kenya shillings 107,445,607,478 in respect of the votes contained in the first schedule. And 3, approves an overall decrease in the total budget for financial year 2024-2025 by Kenya shillings 146,342,055,790 in respect of the votes contained in the first schedule, subject to paragraph 6, that is the Committee of Supply. 4, makes the policy resolutions as contained in the 4th schedule. 5, resolve that the 1st schedule form the basis for the introduction of the Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2024. And 6, orders that the Speaker do now leave the chair to facilitate the consideration of the said budget estimates with respect to each vote and program in the Committee of Supply as contemplated under Standing Order 240. That is, with regards to consideration of supplementary estimates in the Committee of Supply. And the first person to bite the cherry on this would be the member for Aldai. What sort of order? This is your chance to contribute.
Let me raise the point of order, Mr. Speaker, because many of us would like to contribute to this motion, and for the interest of time, because also of the timelines, if we can allow the motions to be 3 minutes instead of 5 minutes. But I think certain issues should have been looked at because as committees, we sat with the departmental, state departments and sagas to be able to rationalize this budget. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well done. Member Huisero, the Honorable Aseka.
Thank you, Chair. I also join colleagues in supporting the supplementary Budget 1, 2024-2025. Honorable Speaker, I think it's in the history of Kenya that we are processing a supplementary budget a month after the signing in law of the appropriation budget. This is a result of the Finance Act that the President didn't sign it into law, which occasioned a deficit in supporting the entire budget. Mr. Speaker, as the chairman has alluded to it, that despite the challenges that are there, the financial gap and the deficits, the budget strives to ensure that our GSS teachers who've been working on contractual terms are confirmed on permanent and pensionable basis, 46,000 of them. Our intern doctors who have been on streets demanding to be posted. This budget has provided funds to ensure that they are accommodated on the payroll. There are doctors and medical workers who were contracted during the COVID-19 who have been working on contractual terms. So, Speaker, this budget has provided funds to ensure that they are also absorbed on the payroll. More so, Mr. Speaker, the budget provides for fertilizer subsidy, which will go a long way in ensuring that this country is food secure. So, Speaker, this budget also has provided money for our energy CDF programs and projects. Despite the loss of about 10 million on that account, the funds are available to support the CDF projects for this financial year. But, Mr. Speaker, as we laud the areas that have been allocated and taken care of, it disturbs my mind, and I may not be an authority on matters economics, but I think also the Treasury technical team is failing this country. So, Speaker, looking at the cuts that were done on this budget, development account is losing close to 137 billion. And as you know, Mr. Speaker, when we reduce economic activities in an economy, it means the economy will not grow. I don't know the wisdom that the Treasury is bringing forward that the economy of Kenya this year will grow by 5.5%, whereas it has gone ahead and reduced about 138 billion from the budget. So, Speaker, Treasury focused more on reducing money for development funded by Jkia, but it did not, at the same measure, reduce recurrent expenditure, which we think most monies are lost. Going forward, Mr. Speaker, it is important that the balance must be arrived at so that when you are reducing monies for development, the commensurate should be the same to the recurrent expenditure. So, Speaker, if government of Kenya will not realize the monies within the financial bill 2023, it means the national government will bear the consequence. It is important that as we go forward, county's government should be brought on board so that when the target is not realized, both the county governments and national government shares the spoils. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we rationalize our expenditure, but touching on domestic travels and expenditure also affects the growth of economy. I've read the report from Treasury that it intends to support the economic growth by supporting the service industries. But once the monies that are supporting these hospitality industries are reduced, it means the economy will not grow. Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Lego Usonga.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also join my colleagues in supporting the supplementary estimates 1, and to say that these estimates have been done in response to complaints from Kenyans that they don't want to be overtaxed, and also following the collapse of the Finance Bill 2024. Honorable Speaker, there have been attempts to address, create austerity measures, and I want to assure members, because I sit in the budget committee, that the austerity measures that have been implemented in this budget are real, and as was suggested by Kenyans, there is not going to be continuous largesse in government, especially this House, Parliament. Parliament is been given only resources that they are only going to use to support their operations. There is no excess allocations everywhere, be it in the executive, be it in the judiciary, and I want to urge Kenyans to support this one. Also, Honorable Speaker, you know that this is the first time that the allocations to NGCDF have been cut, and I'm happy that most members of Parliament are agreeable to this because they understand the implication of raising more taxes. So, Honorable Speaker, this budget is basically answering to the needs of Kenyans, and I know that going forward, Kenyans are going to live, government is going to try to live within their means. Honorable Speaker, the other issue that I wanted to address has to do with the public debt, because public debt is a fundamental aspect of this budget. Honorable Speaker, Kenyans don't want us to borrow. Kenyans are tired of these humongous loans. And therefore, Kenyans are saying that we better forego certain services, but we live within our means. So, Honorable Speaker, I know that borrowing has a lot of implications in the money market, because as you know, Honorable Speaker, interest rates have started to rise because of the projection that there would be a lot of borrowing going forward. Honorable Speaker, I wanted to urge the executive that we should try to do everything within our ability not to accumulate more debts, because accumulation of more debts has the opposite effect of, first of all, creating instability in the money market, interest rates going up. If interest rates continue to go up, then you know that the performance of the economy will be affected. Companies that need to borrow money to create jobs, they won't be able to do that. And we are even not going to raise more taxes. So, Honorable Speaker, if there's anything that we can do, and the government can do, and the Treasury CS can do, it has to be something to address the spiraling public debt. And I know that the incoming Cabinet Secretary for Treasury will be somebody who will understand what I'm talking about. Honorable Speaker, I know we don't have a CS Treasury as we talk, but I hear that there's an announcement which could come. Honorable Speaker, if that announcement comes, I want to say that and urge the President to nominate somebody who will be able to address some of these fundamental questions that we are raising to do with the budget. Honorable Speaker, Kenya is a rich country. Honorable Speaker, I have no doubt in my mind that Kenya is a rich country. But if Kenya is a rich country, what is more fundamental is the way we utilize and we allocate our resources. Honorable Speaker, we have said that corruption eats a lot of our resources. But, Honorable Speaker, this is something which this House must help. This House must champion the war on corruption. There is nobody who will do it. This is the House that must do it. So, in order to ensure that this budget is effective, I want to urge members of Parliament to spearhead efforts aimed at addressing the question of corruption. Honorable Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Maragua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the chance to contribute by supporting the committee for this overwhelming work that they did to bring out the supplementary estimates for the financial year 24-25. Mr. Speaker, I know this was a tedious work for the committee, whereby you need to look at where to cut, bearing in mind wherever the money had been put, there was a budget towards that. But Mr. Speaker, it's also a good time for our Kenyans to know that if we do not pay taxes to finance the government, then we have to forego some services and development as well. Mr. Speaker, we also remember that it is within the public domain that we are talking of the debt, which is really pinning the government so far at 1.8 trillion. And I know this is not a debt that has been incurred by this Kenya Kwanza government. We have inherited from the government or from the administrations that were there before. But nevertheless, a debt when borrowed has to be paid. And since we are the ones who are there, we have to look at how we are going to pay. And that is why Chairman Appropriation Committee, the Budget and Appropriation Committee, was bringing the highlight that in every 100 shillings, 61 is going to the debt. We are only left to struggle with 39 shillings. And with 39, which is supposed to go to the salaries and all that, and also for the development, then it means there are some of the projects that will stall and others that will move very slowly before we conclude. Mr. Speaker, I'm also happy that as we did the cuts, we were able to look at the health, which is paramount, and also education, that we left this so that we may continue with the health docket and the education, which is paramount as far as our health and our children who are in school are concerned. Madam Speaker, allow me to just chip in two areas in support of our chair, where we are talking of scaling down some entities that it seems to double their function to save the government some money. And Madam Speaker, it's not only some entities, we also have some parastatals. Madam Speaker, when we are looking at the audited reports from the Auditor General, every financial year, we are finding that there is a lot of wastage, and we are also finding that there is a lot of corruption. And that is why we are saying the Kenya Kwanza government need to put a lot of effort to address and to minimize some of these entities through parastatals that are really not doing a lot when they miss money from the exchequer, and there is no much effort to make sure maybe there is some donation that we are getting so that some of the projects that we have, they may continue. Sometimes, Madam Speaker, you find that there is an entity or a parastatal that started on a contract, and the said contractor has taken the parastatal to court, and you find that they are very hefty fines that are paid, and sometimes you find that there are those projects that were started and the contractor is not really working, and you find that the employees who are there, we are paying them money, yet there is nothing that they are doing. Madam Speaker, I'm Vice Chair to the Regional Development Committee, and when you look at the RDAs, and there are several that we have, the employees who are there, we are paying them. But you find the moment that there is no money in the exchequer towards them, whatever they are supposed to do, they don't do, they just stay idle. We feel for them, and we know the importance of these RDAs, because some of the projects they are doing are to alleviate maybe the livelihood of the community around. But despite that happening, you wonder what happens in a given year.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Malulu Ijendi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the Budget Committee for this supplementary budget. Madam Speaker, I just want to share my feeling that it's unfortunate that we're in this state of revising our earlier budget due to the demonstrations that we've been having in the country. Madam Speaker, what I want to maybe state or request the Ministry of Treasury, what we learned during this supplementary budget meetings was that Treasury actually came up with cuts across all departments without actually consulting those particular parent ministries. Madam Speaker, for example, the Committee of Education deals with basic education, TVET, university, and the TSC. Madam Speaker, the principal secretaries, when they appeared before the Committee of Education to discuss about this, it was so surprising that they were not consulted when it came to these cuts. However, we are in this state because we have no choice but to cut because the financial bill was rejected. Madam Speaker, I would like also to thank this committee that because they did not affect the interns recruitment, because this is what we are really fearing that it may happen, because the government had actually promised that after internship of 1 year or 2 years, they would be recruited. So all the 46 of them, TSC assured us that they will be recruited. Madam Speaker, I also want to allay fears as raised by Honorable Suda, that those who are champions in demonstrating over this internship program, the 748, we were assured by the CEO, the TSC, that all of them will be recruited together with the rest to make the number 46. Madam Speaker, I also want to thank the Budget Committee. We also noted that during this supplementary budget, something drastic that requires, that's a policy shift had happened where the school feeding program, which was initially removed completely from the main budget, and Education Committee ensured that it was returned. Madam Speaker, this had been removed again, moved to ASAL Ministry. I want to thank the Budget Committee that this was returned to the Minister of Education to ensure that, because the Minister of Education has all the infrastructure that can ensure this feeding program goes on as it has been going on before. However, Madam Speaker, I would like to note that most of our persons, especially Kenyans, will have to understand that because of this supplementary budget, some of the expectations they have been having from us may not be there as such. You know, for example, the chairman has talked of electricity, which we had promised our constituents, doing roads, which we had promised our constituents. This will not now happen because of these budget cuts. And Madam Speaker, also, I would like to note that during the upcoming supplementary budget, maybe in the month of September, I would that they restore the monies that were allocated, for example, to TVET. Because, you know, we want all constituencies to have TVETs. This will ensure that our youth have proper training. Madam Speaker, all the development budget for TVETs was removed. So which means those constituencies that don't have TVETs for now, those TVETs will not be completed. So we want to argue that when the economy improves, this will be returned, restored, so that we ensure we have proper learning, proper training in our country. Otherwise, Madam Speaker, I support the supplementary budget. Thank you.
The Honorable Dr. Pukose, Member for NDBES and Chair Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to contribute. First and foremost, I want to congratulate the chair of the Budget and Appropriation Committee, together with the members, who majority of them are actually seated in this house and contributing to this. Honorable Speaker, as the Committee of Health, which will deal with the rationalization of the budget for the Ministry of Health, both the State Department for Medical Services and the State Department for Public Health and Professional Standards, we realize that there are challenges in this budget following the collapse of the finance bill. Honorable Speaker, this finance bill has serious ramifications in the budget because what it means is that where we were planning to purchase another extra radiotherapy machine for Kenyatta, that has to be suspended because what it means now is that Kenyatta has a banker which is ready for radiotherapy. Had to be foregone because recently we've had interns who are supposed to be posted. The budgetary allocation is 4.3 billion, and what they require is an extra 1.1 billion. And that money cannot be able to be provided because we cannot be able to raise. And therefore, but what we've agreed with the ministry is that they are able to post the interns, all of them, with the SRC proposed salary payout, and then from there, based on what the ruling of the High Court in Eldoret, then that will be able now to inform maybe the subsequent supplementary budget to be able to take care of this. Honorable Speaker, we also have other issues. We have the managed equipment service, which is within the counties, and this is providing where you have CT scans, you have SSD for operations in theater, you have theater equipment, which is being operated within the 97 hospitals. You have radiotherapy, you have radiography, ultrasound, and other services which are being provided. These services have continuously been provided, even without proper extension being done by the ministry together with the suppliers, with the challenges from the counties, because the counties have not committed themselves. The county governors have not committed themselves to be able to take over these services because they are also constrained financially. Honorable Speaker, we also have the rollout of the universal health care through the primary health care, which has now been provided with 2 billion. You have emergency and chronic illness fund, 2 billion, and then the primary health care fund, 4 billion, and you have the social health insurance fund, which is supposed to be rolled out. All these, Honorable Speaker, are challenges that cannot be able to be met because of rationalization of the budget. But all in all, I think with the rationalization of budget, what we went into doing is to make sure that critical services within the ministry are not severely affected, and therefore we were able to give money to institutions like Biofax, which is in the process of vaccine manufacturing, and as you are aware, the donors are in the process of withdrawing. And therefore, we need to be able as a country to manufacture both our own vaccines and also vaccines to prepare for any outbreak of future diseases or epidemics. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I want to support.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Martin Peter Owino, member for Diwa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this motion. And also I want to thank the chair of the Budget Committee for his prowess, knowledge, and also passion on this chair. Madam Speaker, I have about 3 items to highlight after my chair for health have highlighted on our committee. Number 1, Madam Speaker, a reduction of budget does not really mean wastages, theft, and duplications is taken care of. I would like to urge our friends, my colleagues in different departments, and also the watchdog committees. It is our responsibility to oversight properly so that the departments or all the entities that this money is heading to is managed well. And Madam Speaker, it's good that we also made amendment to our standing orders that we get reports every 3 months. If we stick to that and follow carefully these entities that use these monies, then we will prevent wastages, we'll prevent theft, and also overlapping or duplications in implementing the programs. The other thing, Madam Speaker, is about the Treasury. As we speak today, the FY 23-24, most of these entities, the ministries, the departments we are talking about, have either done 50 to 60% because of the delay from the exchequer. And that also frustrates programs and also invite overrun cost in projects. So whoever is going to be the next CS, budget is one thing, releasing money on time is another one. And this is also making these entities incur more money in running the projects. The other issue which we thank the Budget Committee and my health chair have alluded to this is the access to health. Indigents in this country are growing every day, every hour because of poverty and other related factors. And the 8 billion which is going to be given to SHIF must be used properly to make sure the access to healthcare for Kenyans, especially those on the lower part of the lower segment of generation, are taken care of. Because if they don't access medical attention earlier, chances of disease progression is higher, and you deal with of complications which takes more money to manage than when they are detected early and managed. Madam Speaker, we need to talk about education. A lot of money has been given in education, 650 billion. But if you come to my constituency in Dewa, I don't know in your constituency, you hardly see what this money does in terms of capitation, which is usually comes little but comes late. Infrastructure in schools, you can only see the CDF. And this is why we are crying, even if we give reduction to CDF. This is what works in education. So I would have rather take money from the main ministry and give CDF to build classrooms more than put a lot of money there. I have a concern. Madam Speaker, we have put also some money in manufacturing unit, but I think we need to do more, especially under health, on research. KEMRI suffered some reduction. We saved some money for vaccine, but I think we need to do more. Lastly, Madam Speaker, equity and fairness. The people, they were paying debts on infrastructure. And when you go to my constituency, the roads are so poor, and yet they are all paying. This is public money and must be shared equally, rather equitably. So when when they pay their taxes, they need also to have good roads. But it's an issue that sometimes things are centralized, that we have good roads in Nairobi, good roads in urban areas, but when you go to rural areas, there's nothing, and they repay the loans as well. That is unfair. Madam Speaker, I support.
The Honorable Dan Mashako, member for Undanyi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker, first I want to raise by saying I support the report by the Budget and Appropriations Committee as tabled to the House by the Chair, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, this morning. Honorable Chair and Honorable Speaker, I want to first to speak on one recommendation that has been made by the Budget and Appropriations Committee, particularly as it speaks to the fiscal responsibility principle around having more over 30% of our budget, 30% of our budget going to development expenditure. And as we speak today, Chair, in the circumstances we find our country in, the Budget and Appropriations Committee has agreed with the Treasury, and we've reduced the expenditure that goes to development by a whopping 107 billion shillings. Honorable Chair, this translates to about 28% of our budget now going to development expenditure, Honorable Chair. And according to our PFM Act, it mandates that that in every year's budget, minimum of 30% to go into development. And we've recommended that Treasury, in the next BPS that will be done in February next year, they must adhere to this principle where 30%, minimum of 30% goes to development, Honorable Speaker. Why I say this, Honorable Speaker, we know that for our economy to grow, we must have economic activity happening in the country. We see today where we are reducing expenditure on development. That means there'll be little money in circulation, Honorable Speaker. And this will affect our aggregate demand. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we may not achieve the development aspirations that this country has aspired. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, government, that is executive, must create a conducive environment for the private sector to prosper, for the private sector to create the jobs that have been very elusive, for private sector to do business without interruptions, Honorable Speaker. Why I say this, Honorable Speaker, now that we have a higher deficit, we had anticipated to have a 3.3% deficit this financial year, but because of what happened with the finance bill, we are raising this deficit to almost 4.4%, Honorable Speaker. This in itself may result to government going into the money market, borrowing more, and therefore crowding out the private sector. And if that happens, Honorable Speaker, we are easily going to see interest rates going up. And if interest rates go up, Honorable Speaker, then private sector will not be able to access credit that is so important for their businesses and for their investment, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, the borrowing mix, the debt mix, Honorable Speaker, where we are looking at this financial year, Treasury has come before us and indicated that they're looking at a debt mix of 47% internal borrowing and 53% external borrowing, foreign financing, Honorable Speaker. We are saying this must be looked at very keenly so that then as we borrow internally, we work to the fact that any further borrowing will aggravate interest rates going up. And as we go out to borrow foreign borrowing, Honorable Speaker, we must make borrowing under commercial terms extremely difficult as a country, so that then government should go out there and make sure that any borrowing is concessionary, any borrowing is not under commercial terms, because the biggest challenges we have today, Honorable Speaker, is because we borrowed very expensively. We went to Eurobonds where we borrowed expensively, and today we are suffering because of our paying interest rates of in excess of 1 trillion shillings. Honorable Speaker, I also want to speak up and commend the Budget and Appropriations Committee, making sure that they ring-fence money for employment of intern teachers, ring-fence money on employment of our medical interns. And Honorable Speaker, we must, as a country, we must put all our resources to where it matters most. Our young people do not have jobs. Our young people have been volunteering to work as teachers, as doctors, and even under public service. We must create employment, and we must give more resources on this. Honorable Speaker, as I end, we know we may have to wait more for our roads to be done. We may have to wait more for electricity to reach our villages. But as we do this, Honorable Speaker, government must go out there and assure Kenyans that the roads that have been started, at some point next financial year, these roads will be completed. And for electricity that we had promised Kenyans that every constituency.
The Honorable Gishimo Gideji, member for Gishogo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that opportunity. And let me start by thanking the Budget and Appropriation Committee led by the very able Honorable Didi Nyoro for the work well done. Madam Speaker, Kenyans spoke loudly and clearly that they want to live within their means. And this parliament had very good intentions in passing the appropriation bill, which was taking care of very many projects that were pro-Kenyans. And some of those projects were the budget on electricity that was supposed to benefit each and every constituency in this country. However, that has fallen by the side subsequent to the withdrawal of the finance bill, which the president, after listening to the Kenyans, he had to take that action, though I believe every other member of this House meant well for the Kenyans. However, Mr. Speaker, I applaud and thank the Budget Committee for retaining the money for employment of the JSS interns. And I believe the policy that government now needs to take through TSC is to make sure that the employment opportunities for teachers that will become available going forward should, first of all, be taken. All interns should be given priority because they've already been gone through the internship. Instead of taking very fresh people, they should first of all absorb the interns so that other people can also be accommodated through the internship and then they are employed permanently. Madam Speaker, the other emphasis that we've, as a parliament, should be taking very seriously is to put emphasis on the programs that support the youth of this country. Because the youth are the present and they're also the future, so that they can be empowered to be able to access job markets through proper training and those the internships that also become available. And Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I've also seen that the Budget Committee has really tried to put a lot of some money in the ongoing projects, and I think this is the way to go. Where we have already existing projects, we don't need to start new ones and create elephant projects all over the country. Priority should be given to ongoing projects so that they can be completed and the Kenyans can be able to benefit out of the taxes that they've already paid. And in this regard, I'm happy that one of the projects that has been ongoing in my constituency, that is the Geshogo TVET, has already been considered for completion, and it will give opportunities for young Kenyans, for the Gen Zs, to be able to be trained for areas that they can also be able to employ themselves, because not every other Kenyans will be able to be absorbed in white-collar jobs in this country, and the way forward is to train young people to be able to be self-employed. Madam Speaker, as I wind up, all government institutions and accounting officers should also
the permanent and pensionable employment of all must be free. And I want to find out what this exactly means. The impression we were given, and which has been represented by the executive, is that my father, who suffers from cancer and has to take up bills every 3 months from our pockets and his own savings, will not have to do so when SHIF takes place. So I would be keen to see that the supplementary budget has been able to cover all these people with chronic illnesses, including my own father who suffers from cancer. In the area of agriculture, I'm happy to hear that billions of shillings have been set aside for fertilizer. What I have not had are measures that have been put in place to ensure that the sort of fertilizers come that was reported in the last financial year will not be able to take place, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to make a point in support of my Vice Chair of Trade in relation to how the Budget Committee, Treasury engages committees. This House adopted a parliamentary system where committees engage in extensive public participation. Those extensive public participation must mean something. As a member of the Trade Committee, I do agree that the area where employment, and there's been a lot of agitation by our young people out there, including the Genz, on opportunities, governance issues, the ability or inability for this government to put money where there are jobs. Where these jobs could be found is the informal sector. And the chair was correct, and I agree, that only about 3 million Kenyans are in the formal sectors out of 50 million Kenyans. Where and what happens to all the other people who are not in the formal sector? So it therefore behooves this House, and especially the Budget Committee, to have considered all the recommendations that were made by the Trade Committee, which they disregarded. The monies that we removed from Hustler Fund, that we put in other areas so that we ensure that all those other sectors are able to operate. The monies that we removed from Industrial Park, clearly the governors came and misled this government that they have the capacity to be able to put up industrial parks. So we put up money which essentially are white elephants. Lastly, in terms of budget equity, I agree that the reduction and rationalizations must be shared across. And if these are to be shared across, I want to speak to the question of the budget that is put under Parliamentary Service Commission. As a member of Parliament in Nairobi, where we have agitated for almost 3 years, 5 years, the metropolis around mileage, on equity on the issue of mileage. This issue has not only been disregarded by PSC, it has been disregarded by SRC, and I want to suggest that all the mileage that is enjoyed by members of Parliament should be cut. People should be given tickets to go to their constituencies. Either we have mileage for every member, or we don't have mileage for any.
Oh my. I want to give him, honorable members. Well, honorable members will now go to the, what is out of order? What is out of order? The Vice Chair budget.
Honorable Speaker, every member chooses where to vie.
Shall be heard in
I
silence.
don't know
Please
who
proceed.
advised the honorable member to vie in Nairobi. You have the choice to vie anywhere else so that you can be paid mileage. Is he in order?
What is out of order, honorable Vice Chair budget? What is out of order?
He chose to vie in Nairobi.
Well, there is nothing out of order. There is nothing out of order, Honorable Mary Emase. So we will proceed, honorable members, to the Honorable Agnes Pereio, member for Narok North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. to support the supplementary budget with the amendments. I want to thank the committee for considering issues that are affecting our people directly. I support the amendments, and I also want to congratulate them for considering leaving the money that was supposed to hire the interns, teachers, so that we can have teachers in our schools. This is a team of a group of teachers that have really been suffering because they applied for the job with a hope that they were going to be pensionable and permanent, but just to come and receive the amount of money that they received was not enough to cater for their transfer to the schools they are. So I want to thank the Supplementary Budget Committee for considering the teachers. Also for considering health issues. Because we have people, we have health officers who are on the roads trying to fight for their rights, and the committee have really done a tremendous job to consider them so that they can also get their salaries and get their rights. On the fertilizers, that has also solved to answer or to solve the problems our farmers have. Farmers will get a very good yield out of having the subsidized fertilizers, and they can really take care of their families. The coolants are also a good suggestion because these coolants will give money to women, to put women's pockets money, because they will be selling their milk and they can earn a living out of that. And for that reason, I support the supplementary budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Narok North. The Honorable Wilberforce Oundo, Member for Funyula.
Mwago, the pen. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As I stand here to support the supplementary bill 2022-2024, it's indeed an interesting situation we find ourselves in. It's unprecedented because we are preparing a supplementary bill even before we implement the bill itself that we passed just a few days ago. And this, Honorable Speaker, goes to tell us the vanity in which we find ourselves in, that we fail to listen to the people of Kenya who elected us to come here and go to serve other masters. There are no people who sent us to this place. We wouldn't be here if we had been serious, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the cuts being indicated here are substantial. And the cuts being indicated here being so substantial, it indicates all along, as we have always suspected, Honorable Speaker, there is one-tom waste in the executive that we can actually run this country without this wastage. We do hope this supplementary budget and the scare that has been meted towards Kenya Kwanza government by the Genz generation, the Genz group protests, and all Kenyans of goodwill will send them back to the drawing board and sincerely rationalize the budget. Honorable Speaker, all along the narrative that we are being told, all along, that the impunged finance bill was supposed to raise 364 billion. And therefore, the deficit, the cuts that were supposed to have undertaken on this budget should have been equal to 364 billion. When you look at the summary, included in the second schedule attached to this supplementary bill, Honorable Speaker, is 146 billion that is being cut. The chairman of the Budget Appropriation Committee, the chairman of Finance and Planning have not come to us to tell us how do they intend to raise the additional 200 billion. Where is the money coming from? Are we going to delve deeper into borrowing? Yet he has clearly explained that a debt payment, interest payment, is taking a whole 65 shillings for every single cent, for every single cent that we collect. Honorable Speaker, there's too much loud consultation here. Can you protect me? I cannot even hear.
Well, honorable members,
the Chief
I would like the member on the floor to be heard in silence. I'm told that the matter that they are consulting on touches on you, so please proceed, but the consultations shall be lower. Please
Okay,
proceed.
Honorable Speaker, let me repeat again. The Budget Appropriation Committee has clearly told us the budget cuts is 146 billion. We were told that the impunged finance bill was raised 364 billion. There has been no explanation how we are going to raise the difference of close to 200 billion. Are we going back into borrow? And yet he has told us the amount we have borrowed so far, we are using 65 shilling for every 100 bob we collect to pay debts. Are we going to dig deeper into debts? Are we going to delve deeper into the debt? Or are we disregarding the simple theory, simple statement that when you are in a hole, you stop digging? Are we digging deeper and deeper? Honorable Speaker, thirdly, Honorable Speaker, we appropriate money, but hardly is the entire appropriated funds ever disbursed to MDS. As we stand here, last year we were told 30 billion was never disbursed to the counties. CDF itself has got about 13 billion. And if you go through all the state departments, do we do budget for the sake of it, or are we serious in a budget making process? Or do we make avenues to keep on piling pending bills so that we can benefit from interest charges and court awards? As we propose, as we support, it's time to go back and look at budget making process in this country. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, thank you. So in the absence of the Honorable Johanna Ngeno, this chance will go to the Honorable Rebecca Tonkei, member for Narok.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support the budget estimate financial year, the supplementary budget one. Madam Speaker, there are so many things that goes into this budget, which I really support. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the chairman of budget for making a very good presentation on the supplementary budget. Madam Speaker, when you look at 650 billion that goes to the education sector, Madam Speaker, this is something that some of us are very excited about, because when you look at JSS, where every student will get 10,000 shillings per year, Madam Speaker, this is encouraging because many parents cannot afford to pay for their children to be in school. Madam Speaker, there is also the issue of interns, the 46,000 interns who have been employed on contract for the last 1.5 years. Madam Speaker, many interns, especially all over the country, have been talking about when is their confirmation going to be. And I want to thank the Budget Committee for agreeing with the Departmental Committee on Education to have the teachers to be confirmed, the 46,000 teachers on JSS, and even some in primary schools who are on interns. Madam Speaker, we know there are 4,000 teachers in primary schools who are also in interns, and 42,000 on JSS. Madam Speaker, there is also the issue of infrastructure, which is secondary school infrastructure. We all know that we struggle a lot getting classrooms for our students, and they are overcrowded. And Madam Speaker, for this allocation to be in the budget, Madam Speaker, this is also a very good thing to have been done by the Budget Committee. Madam Speaker, the school feeding program, whereby we have 3 billion allocation for the school feeding program, it's also another thing which is encouraging, and it is very good, and it's been captured, and we thank God for that, and thank you, the Budget Committee. Madam Speaker, there's also, when you look at the bottom up, you know, the Kenya Kwanza is talking about the bottom up. And looking at fertilizers, Madam Speaker, this is something where the farmers are going to get subsidized fertilizers, and therefore we are going to get a bumper harvest for our people. We have the increase of salaries for police. Madam Speaker, most of us, even members of parliament, we all know that our security suffers a lot. I was privileged to have been married by one gentleman who was an inspector of police. That is the late Inspector Joshua Tongei. Some of us know how much these people earn. The peanut salaries the policemen earn, Madam Speaker, it's heartbreaking. And therefore, when we get some increment for them, Madam Speaker, these people do a lot. They protect us while we are sleeping. They are in our borders, protecting the country, and they go through a lot of pressure and stress, while their families cannot afford even to put food on the table, leave alone their children to go to school. Madam Speaker, this is something which is encouraging, and I support this budget because of that, coming from that background of being married by a policeman. Madam Speaker, there is also the issue of coolants. I was privileged one time when the president visited my county, and he had promised to give me 30 coolants. Madam Speaker, this will go across for all women to get coolants, and they can afford to take their milk for preservation, and therefore, even the increase of money, around 500 million to KCC, so that women can get payment of 50 shillings per bottle, because it's only in Kenya where we get a bottle of water being more expensive than a bottle of milk. Madam Speaker, I support the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Tonke, and thank you also for taking that opportunity to reflect on the experiences of police officers, of course, citing your later husband. Honorable members, I would like to give this opportunity to the Honorable Esuda. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, and I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the Chair of the Committee of Budget and Appropriations Committee and the entire committee for putting in a lot of hours to ensure that by the time we are opening the House, this is only day 2, we have the supplementary estimates 1 presented in this House, Madam Speaker. I want to just make a few points. First is that as a country, we are actually experiencing extraordinary times, and this calls for extraordinary measures for us as a country, Madam Speaker, and that is why for the first time in the history of Kenya, we have supplementary estimate 1, even before we start implementing the budget that we passed before we went for recess, Madam Speaker. And this was occasioned by Kenyans speaking to us as the leadership, from the topmost leadership, the president, all the way to us in the National Assembly and the Senate, all the way to the counties, and even to the members of the county assemblies, Madam Speaker, by talking to us and telling us that, hey, we do not want to be overtaxed, and even as you tax us, we want to get value for our money. And that is why, Madam Speaker, His Excellency the President did not assent to the finance bill, and that is why, as a committee and as a House, we have revised and we have rationalized the budget to fit onto the shoe that we are wearing as a country, Madam Speaker. I want to say this, that as a committee, we have looked at the austerity measures. And Kenyans have again told us, as leaders, that do not cosmetically talk to us about austerity measures. By just saying that we have cut, we are seeing memos that there will be no travels, that there will be no tea, there will be no flowers. They actually want to see it happening, Madam Speaker. And so they do not want us to just say we won't travel, and then they find out that we sneaked out of the country and traveled. They want to see that when we say there is no travel, by parastatal officers, by members of parliament, by the executive, we will exactly do that. Of course, there will be essential travels where, for example, our country, we have to give a country position, like to the Pan-African Parliament, to the IPU. There are areas that probably we must be there as a country, Madam Speaker. They also want to see that when we travel, there will be no excess baggage of persons who are not going to add value in that travel, Madam Speaker. For example, when we go for sports, you find that the people who are going to run or the people who are going to participate in the sports are not in the list. And then we have joy riders who first get the merchandise free, the ones who go there and enjoy themselves and go out and send photos and have a field day when they go for World Cup and things like that, Madam Speaker. Those are the things Kenyans have said we do not want to see, and as a house, we will be doing our proper oversight. Any executive member who is going to do that, we will not play any tribal card that person comes from my county or that person comes from my area. We would rather lose our political seats rather than going against what Kenyans want, Madam Speaker. But quickly to the issues that are in the budget, which I am happy about. The budget committee and also the government, I must give them credit. They did not go, when we are doing the cuts, Madam Speaker, they did not touch so much on the things that touch directly on the common man. And I'm happy about that. For example, JSS, there was a lot of agitation, and we saw even the letter that Treasury had written to us before we went for recess, that if we reject the finance bill, they will not employ the JSS teachers. I thank the government and also the budget committee by ensuring that has not happened. The JSS teachers will be employed. Equalization fund, we have 8 billion, Madam Speaker. I'm happy also with this government that for the first time in every financial year, we are seeing that equalization fund is prioritized and the monies are also being disbursed. Also, Madam Speaker, school feeding program is there in this budget, Madam Speaker. Lastly, we are seeing hides and skins getting money, Madam Speaker. The other thing that Kenyans have talked about is about equity. We cannot only have money going to coffee sector, tea sector. Even the pastoralists of this country count. They also pay taxes, and I'm happy that there is money for skins and hides so that one of their economic sector can also get money. And for that reason, I do support, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Amos Mwago, member for Starehe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to weigh in on this matter. And on the onset, I want to congratulate the chairman for the budget committee on the recommendations on the budget, the budgetary cuts. I think this has come from the agitation that the public has meted on us as parliament and on the government as a whole. And I think it is time now we think about the principle of the three arms of government, having the legislature, executive, and the judiciary. And I think in the view of the public, our arm of government is performing dismally and is purportedly being controlled by the executive, which we should be oversighting. I think that's an issue that we should bring that debate on the floor of the House and discuss our role as Parliament. What is our role as Parliament? Because we seem to have been overridden by the executive in our mandate to oversight it. I say so because even when you look at some of the areas that the budgetary cuts have been affected, some of the areas are issues that had been raised by the public and were addressed by the executive. When we are talking about the office of the First Lady, the Second Lady, and maybe the office of the wife of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, these are issues that were raised by the public and they were addressed by the executive, which are issues that we as Parliament should have looked into before these issues got to the public galore. I tend to think we also have missed on some of the priorities on the budget cuts, because what the Kenyans are saying, the excesses by government and state officers, there's a very big loophole in how money is spent in this government. The giant of corruption, that's where people are addressing the issues. They are saying those are the areas where we should have budgetary cuts. But it's so shameful that now that we didn't pass the finance bill, we've retorted to cutting budgets for very critical areas, like the chairman for health committee has just stated that there's a machine that was supposed to be bought by Kenyatta Hospital that has to be forgone, but there are people still earning allowances, whereas such crucial machines have been affected by the lack of passing the finance bill. These are the issues that we should talk as parliaments. We need to prioritize what Kenyans need. We have to do the budgetary cuts in the areas that Kenyans do not seem to feel like there are more urgent issues, but those critical areas, that's where we should effect these budgetary cuts. The second thing is the issue of RDS and the duplication of duties among very many government agencies. It is time that in our different committees, there are so many agencies that tend to duplicate duties and people earning so much money, doing the same thing the same way. And this is why I really want to agree with the chairman for budget committee when he talks about when you have different engineers from all road departments in a certain constituency earning money for the same work. These are some of the areas that we should look at. We saw when the county governments, after the election, the county government of Kisii, the governor Simba Arati went ahead and really did, really came out and brought a huge number of workers who are ghost workers. I believe if such a small county as Kisii County had so many ghost workers, it is time to audit all the employees of the government so that we can know which employees are duplicating tasks, so that we can address this issue of money going through the wrong hands. Also, we need to address the issue of the giant element in our budget, that is the recurrent expenditure. We need to see how productive is a recurrent expenditure. This money that we're spending on salaries, are we getting equal value in return from the amount that we're expending, so that we can know where to cut on these budgets? We also have the issue of pending projects and affordable housing. We tend to introduce new projects, but we have so many projects that are pending. In my constituency alone, we have the Jivanji housing project, Pangani housing project, Sarai Point housing project that was launched by the president, but has not taken off. But you're still planning and actually allocating money for more development on affordable housing, whereas even the ones that had been started by the previous regime are not yet done. These are some of the issues that we need to look at. And these are issues that we need to address, and we really need to respect our middle class and the people who are paying taxes in the informal sectors. We cannot increase taxes on the imports in this country, and also
The Honorable Silvanus Osoro, member for South Mogirango.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also want to support, as I make my contribution in regard to the report by the Budget and Appropriation Committee, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we are living in very interesting times. Very, very interesting times, especially economically. It requires us, Honorable Speaker, to take a lot of measures, very, very many measures, Honorable Speaker, so that we can be able to live within our means, Honorable Speaker. In fact, even on personal life, members and even people in public service have been accused of living large. It's now about time that even as we talk about the national budget cuts, we also talk on budget cuts on even our personal homes and even our, way of life in terms of operations, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the challenge this country has had, though, is allowing ministries and departments to put in some very useless or avoidable things that can be avoided in the budget. And when I was watching yesterday's debate by the economic team on one of the mainstream media, Honorable Speaker, one person raised a very, very important issue, that you get a ministry or an office of government purchasing a bottle of water at a cost of 800 shillings, Honorable Speaker. And those are some of the questions that people are raising out there. That how is it that we sometimes want to talk about the budget cuts, or rather raising funds, when some people live large within the offices? These budget cuts are very sensitive in this particular issue, in this particular season, Honorable Speaker. When you are listening to the different departmental committees or different departmental bodies in government and ministries, you would see, looking at the faces of the people presenting and seeking to have their budget cut reinstated, you would wonder, and we were tempted to ask them, where do you want government to raise money from? Because it is in this house, Honorable Speaker, that we pushed for, we had differences in regard to pushing for the finance bill. We heard what the public said about the finance bill that was to raise a certain amount of money. And this had to go down and flow down to the budget cuts. But you will get some departments, Honorable Speaker, approaching us as they were when they appeared before different committees, and I'm sure even the chair budget can confirm. You saw people appearing there with very weak faces saying, how do you want us to operate? It is now about time that within this year, we cut everything, like what the budget has, the appropriation committee has done. It wasn't very easy, I know, because you look at this, you realize it's important. You look at another vote, you realize it's also very important. Looking at the recruitment of the JSS teachers, looking at the way our police officers, Honorable Speaker, were getting overwhelmed by the protesters the other day, that really displayed the fact that maybe we needed some more manpower in as much as such is concerned in that security sector. Looking at the challenges in schools, Honorable Speaker, where we need new classrooms in JSS. And I really think the budget committee has also some element of explanation to make on the budget cuts on education. Because I think 12 billion, or rather 10 billion, is a little too high in terms of cut. Maybe we ought to have, challenged one area of cuts and put more need on education because of the need that is required on the school. So, Honorable Speaker, these challenging times requires that people tighten their belts, because it is not easy to live normally in abnormal times. Even in this house, Honorable Speaker, there are things that will be affected. We are not going to have foreign travels as much. Our staff members that had to, they needed a bit of some pay rise will also be affected. And this must go out in the public so that people get to know that members of parliament are also affected, because there is a perception out there that members of parliament live large and you need to cut their salaries. Please confirm to them that we are now also affected. It is not only the members of the public or of the other ministries that have been affected. Even members of parliament have been affected, from their staffing to their operations, and we have accepted.
Your two colleagues. Thank you. The Honorable Babu Owino, member for.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Mbakasi.
Thank you so much. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this budget on the following grounds, Madam Speaker: that we need a budget that is based on development, a budget that is not based on or does not look on only the recurrent expenditure as a nation, because, Madam Speaker, we need our children to go to school, we need to employ more teachers, we need to employ more doctors, we need medicine in hospitals, and we need development in different regions. We need industries, we need factories that can provide jobs to our young men and women in this nation. Madam Speaker, we do not need a bloated budget that is favoring patrimonialism. A budget where a cabinet secretary was buying a python belt at 800,000 Kenya shillings and crocodile shoes at 2 million Kenya shillings, and said that they have a weakness for finer things. This budget, as it is, Madam Speaker, is going to cater for the interest of Kenyans, because we must cut our coat according to our size.
I have a point of order. Honorable Babu Owino, I have a point of order from the Honorable Cynthia Muge. What is out of order, Mheshimiwa?
Madam Speaker, I'm just wondering if the Honorable Babu Owino is in order to mention that whatever belt or whatever watch whoever is wearing, Honorable Speaker, was budgeted or was funded by the budget of this country.
Madam Speaker, because before that cabinet secretary became a cabinet secretary.
So what is out of order? On the statement of fact.
Statement of fact, Honorable Speaker. And can he prove that that was budgeted for in this budget and in this government's budget?
Yes, Honorable Babu Owino, I would like you to respond to that.
Madam Speaker, we know very well the kind of a lifestyle the cabinet secretary was living before he became a cabinet secretary, and we know how he was dressing. But again, he went on record, and it is a statement of fact, not factoids. Went on record and said that he was in possession of a crocodile belt worth 2 million Kenya shillings, and his salary is not even that amount. So, Madam Speaker, the honorable member here should not defend such acts. As I proceed, Madam Speaker, please do not interrupt. Because
Babu Owino, I would like you to encourage you to be factual because you only have 5 minutes and I know you have a lot to say. Please be factual, be aware of standing order number 87. You may proceed with that in mind.
So, as I proceed with my submission, Madam Speaker, it is very clear if I want to talk about this issue of the debt question, that, Madam Speaker, borrowing in a nation is not wrong, but borrowing to fund recurrent expenditure is wrong, borrowing to sponsor patrimonialism is wrong, borrowing to steal that money in terms of corruption is wrong. And any money borrowed on those lines becomes unproductive debt, which is not beneficial to our nation. Borrowing, as was opined by Franco Modigliani, an Italian-American economist, who said clearly and came up with the theories of consumption, to be precise, life cycle hypothesis, and he came up with the idea of the debt system, that you can borrow what you should enjoy in 70 years to come. You can enjoy it now, borrow and enjoy it now as you repay for it in quantum merit basis. So therefore, Madam Speaker, borrowing is not wrong, but borrowing for corruption is wrong. So I stand to support this budget because the Gen Zs spoke. These Gen Zs, they're in universities. They need the varsity fees to be reduced. These Gen Zs at the same time, Madam Speaker, need to be employed because these are people who have graduated but there are no jobs. Thank you.
The Honorable Omboko Milemba, member for Emuhaya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Whereas I have a lot of respect for the Budget Committee and its chair, and for the work it did, despite the fact that we have several challenges that required budget cuts, I would really want the Budget Committee to listen to me carefully. That when you went back to look at the budget which was supposed to be mutilated because of the fact that the finance bill had not gone through, it was very important that we prioritize things which must be achieved. When you are not having enough money in your home, you must go for the necessities. Honorable members, when you look at one of the pages in this budget, you will look at the Teacher Service Commission budget. So whereas we are celebrating that we have employed all the JSS teachers, which is 18.5 billion Kenya shillings, there was an agreement between the teachers of Kenya and the government of Kenya in what was called the CBA. The CBA was signed and deposited in court sometimes last year. And the government of Kenya paid the teachers half of that CBA, which was about 13 billion. The remaining 13 billion was to be paid in this financial year. When you look at the budget of the Teacher Service Commission, it has been cut on its recurrent expenditure by exactly 10 billion, meaning that all the teachers of Kenya are not going to get their full CBA as had been agreed by the government. Now, the chair budget, if is anywhere, what you are doing to this country, which is already going through various demonstrations by both the young people and other groups, you are actually going to draw all the 400,000 teachers of Kenya out on the streets because we have allocated those money on roads, possibly, on other things which otherwise would have waited so that we clear with the teachers. The teachers were looking forward for the following 4 things in this particular budget, which
are not forthcoming. Number one was the phase 2 of the CBA, which is costing 13.5 billion Kenya shillings, which has been removed. Number 2 was a medical cover for teachers, which has been in existence and which was 15 billion. And when you look at this again, it has gotten a cut. Number 3 was promotion of teachers, which had been given 1.5 billion, and which again, I can see is not in the budget. And lastly, was of course the issue of the employment of the JSS teachers, which we have achieved. Now, what are we doing to our country? Already we are in a mood of riots and demonstrations. And now you want to draw all the teachers on the streets. In fact, the leadership within the budget committee, I wish the chair was here, this is a step of trying to incite the teachers of Kenya to get out of class and go on the streets. The teachers had been patient knowing that their package will be in this budget. And therefore, I want to say that we shall not, and I want to ask you, honorable members, because this will affect you starting next week and the following week. I don't see us going anywhere because it will affect us in our constituencies. We must make an amendment to this budget to include the 13.5 billion for the CBA of the teachers. And the economists are here. I've already talked to them. No, we don't need to borrow because there are places where we can prioritize. Why would we be building a road and not pay teachers? The road can wait for tomorrow, honestly. So let's be very realistic when we shall look at the next step of this particular matter so that we get 13.5 billion shit for the Kenyan teachers. Otherwise, even those of us who have been enjoying some limelight because of one or two things, the teachers will be on the streets. Yes, the JSS will be there, but the rest of the 400,000 teachers, I'm telling you, will get on the streets. And this is not what we require at this particular time. The budget chair and his leadership cannot incite the teachers as we see. So members help to revert this so that the teachers get their CBA. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yes.
The Honorable Mawathe, member for Embakasi South.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute in this important bill. That is actually the report, that is the budget 2024-2025. We live in very hard economic times, very challenging times. So as a country, we must learn to live within our means. I am glad that the budget committee has reduced the budget to what is affordable without increasing taxes on the Kenyans. We are glad that the budget committee has been able to include the funds for the absorption and the employment of the JSS teachers countrywide. One of the things that is missing or lacking in this budget is the funds for the feeding program for the kids in the slum areas, school feeding program. We've noticed that there is school feeding program funds for the Asal area, but I can assure you, most of the students in the slum areas, most of the parents are actually poorer than the people that are living in the Asal areas. So, Mr. Chairman of the budget committee, we urge you together with your committee that the next budget we must include the budget for feeding program for the slum areas. Also, there is need to put more funds for additional classes in Nairobi schools. And the reason is when people graduate or finish their school, they come to look for employment in Nairobi. They get married in Nairobi. They get the kids in Nairobi. The population for Nairobi has grown from what was about maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 2.5 million people to about 3.5. It was 5.5 during the last election. I am sure it will be about 7 million people. And yet, the number of the size of land is not growing, and the demand for schools is increasing every year. With those few, I do support. Thank you.
The Honorable Andrew Okuome, member for Karachonyo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we all know where we are coming from. The 2024 finance bill was rejected all through by the President and the people of Kenya. If we are not careful, we may generate another problem. This estimate must address that feeling outside there with the people. We know the cost of living is a cause of the problem we have in Kenya. Cost of manufacturing the same, and cost of business the same. Are we addressing these issues? Because these issues are responsible for employment. If we do something that will encourage investment, we'll be creating employment and therefore solving the problem which is outside there in the public. Madam Speaker, people want to see the impact of our taxation, the impact of our budget. If I take, for example, CDF, I would urge the chairman of budget committee to ensure that he doesn't interfere with CDF. That's where people are feeling the impact of what the government is doing. If we go to attack the CDF, reduce it, it means we are reducing the number of children we can support in education. We are reducing the number of classrooms we can build to encourage education. We will be telling the public that we are not addressing their issues fully. There are many areas we can reduce without creating a public outcry. I urge, and I really urge, and I agree with my colleague who had also spoken, is a trade unionist in the teaching service, and therefore what he says is really coming from practical experience. I say that we should not reduce anything to do with what goes to the general public. Madam Speaker, having said that, let me also say something about the borrowing. We are still going for borrowing again, and this is what we have been told is a real cause of the problem in Kenya, and we are still going for that again. I really urge that we don't go for borrowing again in this country, because doing that is going to cause us problem. People are going to say, but this is what caused the problem. They are going to continue on the street again. So I urge that we don't go for borrowing, even if it means a reduction of expenditure again in areas which are not essential. Let us go for that as an alternative. Madam Speaker, thanks so much.
The Honorable Julius Ruto, member for Cases.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to also raise an input to ongoing discussion on Supplementary Budget 1. Madam Speaker, we are aware that we are here because of the current unprecedented events that took place, that it cost us now to, even prior to commencing operationalizing the financial year 2024-2025, with the period has just commenced in this month of July, we are now back to discussion on what will we be doing to ensure that we run the country. Madam Speaker, listening to contributions by members, it is very exciting that some of us now, we are realizing the reality, or we are meeting with the reality of the fact that at the point we were discussing on how to fund the desired expenditure to further our desire for development, our desire for inclusivity, our desire for distribution of resources accordingly,
Now we are here discussing how we are going to manage by reducing what already we had excited our intention. Madam Speaker, it is at this point now that we need to speak to ourselves. Talking generally on the aspect of financial management, talking generally on the clear agenda that the Kenyans are speaking to us, that we need to focus. There are many things that we need to speak about. But of all this is the idea that we need to call ourselves to a meeting. Every person in governance, be it from the president, the cabinet secretaries, the head of departments, semi-autonomous agencies, parastatals, even including devolved government units. That the reality here is that we are faced with difficulties, stress in our limited resources we have. The debt limit, that the cost of debt, the interest, looking at the budget that we are discussing now, 1.2 trillion, is here marked for a first charge called prepayment of debt, not even discussing the retirement of the principal amount of debt. That's the reality where we are now. It is at this point again that the economy and Kenyans are panning for them to be considered so that we have equal life as Kenyans. We have equal opportunity to access even the little resources to support our lives. We are looking at economic agendas that is going to spur the growth of our economy. But here we are now lamenting what are we going to do. That we cannot support more borrowing. But again, the deficit on what we need is taking us that direction. That we cannot finance the existing debts. That we cannot even support our economy by allowing our commercial banks to redirect the resources directly to the economic growth. But now we are pulling from our commercial banks to support the needs of the government of day in, day out, especially repayment of debts. Madam Speaker, I want to rise on this point and to request that it is now a time that we want to evaluate the little resources we have. And I want to speak much on the appropriation in aid. Looking at the report of the Budget and Appropriation Committee, they are raising a concern that during the budget making process, agencies, SAGAs, MDAs are not putting a full disclosure on what they are collecting as A&A. You see, it's a concern. Only that during supplementary is when they come forth and say, please, would you mind to consider expanding our budget since we have now realized we have an opportunity to raise much. And during the budget making process, we are going through a lot of stress. We are going to kill a lot of other programs. Yet there are people who are in government and they cannot give the right information when it is required. It is at this point that I want to call on all agencies, including this House, the Parliament, and the committees on oversight, that let us extend our eyes beyond and begin to look at around this area. Other issues that I want to call upon is devolution. Devolution was brought to support growth of our economy, so that we stop only looking at stressing our main budget. Can we look at other areas that is able to generate production, support the basic need, and then we begin to discuss about manufacturing, we begin to discuss about growing our economy, removing it from trading economy to a production economy. Madam Speaker, because of time, I had a lot to say, but I want to say it is time that this particular period speaks to us. Let us be in good governance and support our economy. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable members, clearly this motion has a lot of interest and it will continue in another sitting. Honorable members, and the time now being 2 minutes past 1 p.m., this House stands adjourned until today, Wednesday, 24th July 2024 at 2:30 p.m.
Majority Leader, Honorable Aaron Cheruiyot, and the Senate Minority Leader, Honorable Stewart Madzayo. And this is a motion that came about following the protest by the Generation Z. And in this motion, if you will recall, is that on the Tuesday afternoon sitting, there are amendments that were brought forward with regards to this motion. The amendments were moved by the Honorable Senator for Laikipia, John Nderitu Kinyua, moving amendments to the motion on the current state of the nation. And in these amendments is that there are a number of resolutions that the member seeks to have the House consider and resolve, of course, to create an amiable environment and tone for a national conversation and dialogue in the country. And some of these resolutions include that the National Police Service acknowledges and apologizes for all the deaths resulting from the peaceful demonstrations, that all victims of police brutality related to peaceful protests between 2023 and 2024 be compensated by the government of the Republic of Kenya, that the National Police Service extends amnesty to all the peaceful protesters who are unlawfully detained during the peaceful protest. The Senate will also be resolving to call upon the Director of Public Prosecutions to withdraw all the cases in court involving peaceful protesters against the finance bill, that the Independent Police Oversight Authority also moves with speed to investigate and recommend appropriate action against police officers found culpable of using brutality against peaceful protesters. With regards to the amendments that have been brought on this particular motion on the current state of the nation, is that the Senate will be resolving that the National Police Service submits to Parliament the revised standard operating procedures on the management of protests, demonstrations, and the use of force to contain demonstrations. And also Parliament puts in place guidelines on actualization of Article 37 of the Constitution with respect to how citizens can enjoy the right to picket without resulting in the loss of life or property. Now, if you can recall this motion, when the debate on this motion began, is that a number of members got the opportunity to weigh in on this motion. However, not all senators have managed to give their views with regards to this motion. There are about 6 or 7 senators that are yet to participate. And if you can recall, is that in yesterday's afternoon sitting, there needed to be consensus on whether members will be taking part again in full to weigh in on these new amendments or on these amendments that have been brought with regards to that motion on the current state of the nation. And it was adjourned and moved to this morning sitting, so we will be waiting to understand whether all members will be again weighing in on this motion with regards to the new amendments. That is the Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason Jeffa Kingi, making his way into the
withdrawn. This will enable the agencies to focus their resources, efforts, and time in investigating and prosecuting serious criminal elements who took advantage of peaceful demonstrations to advance a dangerous agenda of lawlessness, anarchy, and mayhem. It is important that these suspects are brought to book and that they are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I also take this opportunity to affirm the constitutional authority and duty vested on our national security institutions to protect our country against internal and external threats to sovereignty, to lives of our people, our rights, freedoms, property, peace, stability, and prosperity, as well as our collective national interest. Consequently, I call on the National Police Service to use its mandate responsibly, professionally, and effectively in full compliance with the Constitution, with a view to promoting the national objectives of Article 238, 239, and 244 of our Constitution. All breaches and violations by police officers must be handled expeditiously through due process, with a view to giving Kenyans a police service that upholds the highest standards of integrity. As citizens of this great nation, we all have a duty to balance our rights and responsibilities at all times, so that the legitimate exercise of our rights and freedoms does not undermine our broader aspirations to remain a civilized, democratic, and peaceful country governed under the rule of law and institutions of governance for the benefit of all of us. Over the last 1 month, the livelihoods and property of many innocent people have also been destroyed, plunging them into destitution and jeopardizing the welfare of their dependents. The government of Kenya will equally take measures to support these Kenyans on the path to recovery of their businesses. I direct the relevant ministries to obtain, verify, and provide accurate data to facilitate appropriate government action within the next 30 days. I want to give the people of Kenya an assurance that our government listens to them, and that for the last 1 month, I have led the government in engaging and listening to citizens from all walks of life as they express themselves in different forums and on various platforms. What has emerged as the foremost national concern requiring urgent and decisive action is the vexing matter of corruption and the non-negotiable desire for accountable leadership and integrity in governance. I have this to say to Kenyans. I have heard you, and I have heard you clearly. Consequently, the following measures shall be taken to accelerate progress to achieving the objectives stated by the people. Number 1, I will be proposing amendments to the Evidence Act and the Criminal Procedure Code, among other necessary legislative amendments to all statutes relating to corruption, to expedite investigations and prosecution of corruption and economic crimes cases, and provide for their conclusion within 6 months. We shall also be proposing amendments to the Witness Protection Act to overhaul the statutory and institutional framework to protect and incentivize whistleblowers and enhance witness protection, making it easier and safer for citizens to come forward and report corruption as well as other criminal activities. Number 3, within 90 days, we shall propose amendments to the Public Finance Management Act and Public Procurement and Disposal Acts to overhaul the institutional and operational framework of public procurement, which has been identified as the epicenter of corruption, conflict of interest, and abuses of office in the public sector, with a view to deploying digital infrastructure within the next 6 months. The aim of this measure is to provide an open and transparent public procurement platform which gives open, real-time, and end-to-end public visibility of public procurement from advertisement to award of contract, and to whom it is awarded, and what amount the people of Kenya will pay. Number 4, I have engaged with the parliamentary leadership and asked Parliament to expeditiously pass the Conflict of Interest Bill with the explicit caveat that I shall veto any bill enacted if it does not establish the highest bar with respect to accountability, integrity, and anti-corruption. I will make full use of the power given to me under Article 115 of the Constitution to make sure that the bill meets the appropriate standards set out in the original bill. Number 5, while fully respecting the independence of the national justice, law, and order institutions, and pursuant to a commitment to consult and collaborate in leveraging their institutional capabilities in effective, expeditious, and conclusive investigations in respect of all active cases, it is essential for these institutions to provide a time frame to the people of Kenya, because that is what the people of Kenya want, within which proceedings shall be concluded, and the same timelines clearly communicated to the public. Number 6, about 400 billion shillings is spent on tax expenditure every year, especially on VAT refunds, a process that is largely opaque and with limited accountability. Within 90 days, I will be working with Parliament to provide a legislative and regulatory framework to make this process transparent, open, and accountable, with a view to reducing this huge public expenditure and direct savings from this exercise to the productive sectors of our economy. This is going to be a very important exercise of engaging Parliament in consultations with the people as to whether it is right for us to spend 400 billion Kenya shillings every year collected from the people of Kenya to pay a few companies on matters of VAT refund. Number 7, the government will also work with Parliament to tighten legislation to reduce and eliminate imports of goods and products already manufactured in Kenya, so as to promote our value addition, our manufacturing, and industrialization program in our quest to create more jobs, create more opportunities, and create wealth in our nation. We must have a national conversation as to whether we want to be a supermarket for products from other countries, or we want to produce products that we already have manufacturing capacity in Kenya. In my last address to the nation, I undertook to consult a broad spectrum of stakeholders from all sectors, levels, and regions in order to constitute a broad-based government. In line with this undertaking, I will be forwarding additional names to Parliament for vetting prior to appointment based on the understanding of the Cabinet's essential role in driving the transformational agenda that makes Kenya a better, more just, and more prosperous nation for all of us. Once constituted, the new cabinet will steward our transformation agenda that is already in place in providing effective and efficient public services, expanding opportunities for employment and wealth creation, and creating a tide that lifts every boat. Our collective ambition is to turbocharge the performance of our economy, to achieve our universal health coverage, which ensures that no one is left behind or impoverished on account of healthcare costs. Also offer an equitably funded education system which looks out for learners from vulnerable backgrounds and ensure that Kenyans from all walks of life live in safe and dignified housing through our affordable housing program. Additionally, our transformation agenda commits to provide reliable clean water, last-mile connectivity of electricity, and to secure more business opportunities for enterprises and employment opportunities for our young people, both here at home and abroad. Our explicit aim is to transform Kenya into a middle-income society, and it is essential for us to urgently mobilize adequate resources to fund these necessary programs and projects. Consequently, after extensive consultations, I have nominated the following persons for consideration and approval by the National Assembly for appointment as cabinet secretaries. I commend the leadership of diverse organizations, both in public and private sectors, including political parties, for their encouraging response to my outreach to consult on forming a broad-based government. Their willingness to set aside partisan positions and interests in order to join a visionary partnership for the radical transformation of Kenya is a historic gesture of their patriotism. I know and I understand acutely the huge expectation of the people of Kenya on me and this administration. And I equally understand that that responsibility can be made easier if we work together as a nation. And as I said, the opportunity we have to work together across political lines, across different divisions, is much more greater than the challenge and the crisis we have in our hands. I take this opportunity to express my appreciation for their commitment and reiterate my pledge to engage alongside them in a national conversation that is inclusive, citizen-centered, and aimed at consolidating and accelerating the actualization of inclusive growth and national transformation. As I take this step, and as I expand and broaden this administration, I am acutely aware that the responsibility of managing the affairs of the country vested in the cabinet, in the expanded cabinet, will require of us to work together and to focus on that which brings honor to our country. I will shortly give you the list of my nominees. Just hold your horses. Just hold your horses. Great. Oops. That's the old list again. Where did it disappear? I think this is a problem of making it very confidential and not allowing many people to have a look at it. As you're all aware, the list I sent to the National Assembly, I have since amended so that Roslinda Soipan Tuya now goes to the Ministry of Defense. The Honorable Aden Baredwale moves to Environment, Climate Change, and Forestry. I have now forwarded the name of John Mbadi Ngongo to the Ministry of National Treasury and Economic Planning. Salim Mvuria Mgala, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. Ms. Rebecca Miano, Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. The Honorable James Opio Wandai, Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. The Honorable Onesimus Kipchumba Murkomen, Ministry of Youth Affairs, Creative Economy and Sports. The Honorable Hassan Ali Joho, Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs. The Honorable Dr. Alfred Nganga Mutua, Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. The Honorable Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya, Ministry of Cooperatives and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Development. The Honorable Justin Bidan Njoka Muturi, Ministry of Public Service and Human Capital Development. Madam Stella Soy Langat, Ministry of Gender, Culture, Arts and Heritage. I am still working on the other pending nominees, and I will be announcing them shortly. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless our great nation, Kenya. Asanteni sana.
A very good morning to you and welcome to today's broadcast. Welcome to the National Assembly proceedings. Today being Wednesday, July 24th. It's just 3 minutes before the commencement of today's sitting. This is the Parliamentary Broadcast Unit in collaborations with KBC. My name is Angela Chiror. And today, being the second day after members of Parliament resumed from their recess, the members this morning are expected to deliberate and consider a couple of motions and bills, starting with the procedural motion by the leader of the majority party,
effective measures and ensure that people who may have been innocently caught up on the wrong side of things and those not implicated in crimes be released and charges against them withdrawn. This will enable the agencies to focus their resources, efforts, and time in investigating and prosecuting serious criminal elements who took advantage of peaceful demonstrations to advance a dangerous agenda of lawlessness, anarchy, and mayhem. It is important that these suspects are brought to book and that they are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I also take this opportunity to affirm the constitutional authority and duty vested on our national security institutions to protect our country against internal and external threats to sovereignty, to lives of our people, our rights, freedoms, property, peace, stability, and prosperity, as well as our collective national interest. Consequently, I call on the National Police Service to use its mandate responsibly, professionally, and effectively in full compliance with the Constitution with a view to promoting the national objectives of Article 238, 239, and 244 of our Constitution. All breaches and violations by police officers must be handled expeditiously through due process with a view to giving Kenyans a police service that upholds the highest standards of integrity. As citizens of this great nation, we all have a duty to balance our rights and responsibilities at all times so that the legitimate exercise of our rights and freedoms does not undermine our broader aspirations to remain a civilized, democratic, and peaceful country governed under the rule of law and institutions of governance for the benefit of all of us. Over the last 1 month, the livelihoods and property of many innocent people have also been destroyed, plunging them into destitution and jeopardizing the welfare of their dependents. The government of Kenya will equally take measures to support these Kenyans on the path to recovery of their businesses. I direct the relevant ministries to obtain, verify, and provide accurate data to facilitate appropriate government action within the next 30 days. I want to give the people of Kenya an assurance that our government listens to them and that for the last 1 month, I have led the government in engaging and listening to citizens from all walks of life as they express themselves in different forums and on various platforms. What has emerged as the foremost national concern requiring urgent and decisive action is the vexing matter of corruption and the non-negotiable desire for accountable leadership and integrity in governance. I have this to say to Kenyans. I have heard you, and I have heard you clearly. Consequently, the following measures shall be taken to accelerate progress to achieving the objectives stated by the people. Number one, I will be proposing amendments to the Evidence Act and the Criminal Procedure Code, among other necessary legislative amendments to all statutes relating to corruption, to expedite investigations and prosecution of corruption and economic crimes cases, and provide for their conclusion within 6 months. We shall also be proposing amendments to the Witness Protection Act to overhaul the statutory and institutional framework to protect and incentivize whistleblowers and enhance witness protection, making it easier and safer for citizens to come forward and report corruption as well as other criminal activities. Number three, within 90 days, we shall propose amendments to the Public Finance Management Act and Public Procurement and Disposal Acts to overhaul the institutional and operational framework of public procurement, which has been identified as the epicenter of corruption, conflict of interest, and abuses of office in the public sector, with a view to deploying digital infrastructure within the next 6 months. The aim of this measure is to provide an open and transparent public procurement platform which gives open, real-time, and end-to-end public visibility of public procurement from advertisement to award of contract and to whom it is awarded and what amount the people of Kenya will pay. Number four, I have engaged with the parliamentary leadership and asked Parliament to expeditiously pass the Conflict of Interest Bill with the explicit caveat that I shall veto any bill enacted if it does not establish the highest bar with respect to accountability, integrity, and anti-corruption. I will make full use of the power given to me under Article 115 of the Constitution to make sure that the bill meets the appropriate standards set out in the original bill. Number five, while fully respecting the independence of the national justice, law, and order institutions, and pursuant to a commitment to consult and collaborate in leveraging their institutional capabilities in effective, expeditious, and conclusive investigations in respect of all active cases, it is essential for these institutions to provide a time frame to the people of Kenya, because that is what the people of Kenya want, within which proceedings shall be concluded, and the same timelines clearly communicated to the public. Number six, about 400 billion shillings is spent on tax expenditure every year, especially on VAT refunds, a process that is largely opaque and with limited accountability. Within 90 days, I will be working with Parliament to provide a legislative and regulatory framework to make this process transparent, open, and accountable, with a view to reducing this huge public expenditure and direct savings from this exercise to the productive sectors of our economy. This is going to be a very important exercise of engaging Parliament in consultations with the people as to whether it is right for us to spend 400 billion Kenya shillings every year collected from the people of Kenya to pay a few companies on matters of VAT refund. Number 7, the government will also work with Parliament to tighten legislation to reduce and eliminate imports of goods and products already manufactured in Kenya, so as to promote our value addition, our manufacturing, and industrialization program in our quest to create more jobs, create more opportunities, and create wealth in our nation. We must have a national conversation as to whether we want to be a supermarket for products from other countries, or we want to produce products that we already have manufacturing capacity in Kenya. In my last address to the nation, I undertook to consult a broad spectrum of stakeholders from all sectors, levels, and regions in order to constitute a broad-based government. In line with this undertaking, I will be forwarding additional names to Parliament for vetting prior to appointment based on the understanding of the Cabinet's essential role in driving the transformational agenda that makes Kenya a better, more just, and more prosperous nation for all of us. Once constituted, the new cabinet will steward our transformation agenda that is already in place in providing effective and efficient public services, expanding opportunities for employment and wealth creation, and creating a tide that lifts every boat. Our collective ambition is to turbocharge the performance of our economy, to achieve our universal health coverage, which ensures that no one is left behind or impoverished on account of healthcare costs. Also offer an equitably funded education system which looks out for learners from vulnerable backgrounds and ensure that Kenyans from all walks of life live in safe and dignified housing through our affordable housing program. Additionally, our transformation agenda commits to provide reliable clean water, last-mile connectivity of electricity, and to secure more business opportunities for enterprises and employment opportunities for our young people, both here at home and abroad. Our explicit aim is to transform Kenya into a middle-income society, and it is essential for us to urgently mobilize adequate resources to fund these necessary programs and projects. Consequently, after extensive consultations, I have nominated the following persons for consideration and approval by the National Assembly for appointment as cabinet secretaries. I commend the leadership of diverse organizations, both in public and private sectors, including political parties, for their encouraging response to my outreach to consult on forming a broad-based government. Their willingness to set aside partisan positions and interests in order to join a visionary partnership for the radical transformation of Kenya is a historic gesture of their patriotism. I know and I understand acutely the huge expectation of the people of Kenya on me and this administration. And I equally understand that that responsibility can be made easier if we work together as a nation. And as I said, the opportunity we have to work together across political lines, across different divisions, is much more greater than the challenge and the crisis we have in our hands. I take this opportunity to express my appreciation for their commitment and reiterate my pledge to engage alongside them in a national conversation that is inclusive, citizen-centered, and aimed at consolidating and accelerating the actualization of inclusive growth and national transformation. As I take this step, and as I expand and broaden this administration, I am acutely aware that the responsibility of managing the affairs of the country vested in the cabinet, in the expanded cabinet, will require of us to work together and to focus on that which brings honor to our country. I will shortly give you the list of my nominees. Just hold your horses. Just hold your horses. Great. Oops. That's the old list again. Where did it disappear? I think this is a problem of making it very confidential and not allowing many people to have a look at it. As you're all aware, the list I sent to the National Assembly, I have since amended so that Roslinda Soipan Tuya now goes to the Ministry of Defense. The Honorable Aden Baredwale moves to Environment, Climate Change, and Forestry. I have now forwarded the name of John Mbadi Ngongo to the Ministry of National Treasury and Economic Planning. Salim Mvuria Mgala, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. Ms. Rebecca Miano, Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. The Honorable James Opio Wandai, Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. The Honorable Onesimus Kipchumba Murkomen, Ministry of Youth Affairs, Creative Economy and Sports. The Honorable Hassan Ali Joho, Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs. The Honorable Dr. Alfred Nganga Mutua, Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. The Honorable Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya, Ministry of Cooperatives and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Development. The Honorable Justin Bidan Njoka Muturi, Ministry of Public Service and Human Capital Development. Madam Stella Soy Langat, Ministry of Gender, Culture, Arts and Heritage. I am still working on the other pending nominees, and I will be announcing them shortly. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless our great nation, Kenya. Asanteni sana. Robust exercise of these rights and freedoms by Kenyans who called on their government to pay attention to urgent national issues and to prioritize necessary changes and reforms to actualize their aspirations. It is with deep regret that I have to say that many Kenyans lost their lives and others seriously injured as a result of disturbances occasioned by lawless activity during these protests. This is not how and where our democracy should proceed. And we must do all we can to ensure that this does not occur again in future. The government of Kenya will provide necessary support to all families and citizens who lost their loved ones. Unfortunately, there has been many instances of excessive, unlawful, dangerous, and harmful conduct during the demonstrations and engagements, as a consequence of which many persons have been arrested and charged in courts with various offenses. I urge the criminal justice agencies to take effective measures and ensure that people who may have been innocently caught up on the wrong side of things and those not implicated in crimes be released and charges against them withdrawn. This will enable the agencies to focus their resources, efforts, and time in investigating and prosecuting serious criminal elements who took advantage of peaceful demonstrations to advance a dangerous agenda of lawlessness, anarchy, and mayhem. It is important that these suspects are brought to book and that they are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I also take this opportunity to affirm the constitutional authority and duty vested on our national security institutions to protect our country against internal and external threats to sovereignty, to lives of our people, our rights, freedoms, property, peace, stability, and prosperity, as well as our collective national interest. Consequently, I call on the National Police Service to use its mandate responsibly, professionally, and effectively in full compliance with the Constitution, with a view to promoting the national objectives of Article 238, 239, and 244 of our Constitution. All breaches and violations by police officers must be handled expeditiously through due process, with a view to giving Kenyans a police service that upholds the highest standards of integrity. As citizens of this great nation, we all have a duty to balance our rights and responsibilities at all times, so that the legitimate exercise of our rights and freedoms does not undermine our broader aspirations to remain a civilized, democratic, and peaceful country governed under the rule of law and institutions of governance for the benefit of all of us. Over the last 1 month, the livelihoods and property of many innocent people have also been destroyed, plunging them into destitution and jeopardizing the welfare of their dependents. The government of Kenya will equally take measures to support these Kenyans on the path to recovery of their businesses. I direct the relevant ministries to obtain, verify, and provide accurate data to facilitate appropriate government action within the next 30 days. I want to give the people of Kenya an assurance that our government listens to them, and that for the last 1 month, I have led the government in engaging and listening to citizens from all walks of life as they express themselves in different forums and on various platforms. What has emerged as the foremost national concern requiring urgent and decisive action is the vexing matter of corruption and the non-negotiable desire for accountable leadership and integrity in governance. I have this to say to Kenyans. I have heard you, and I have heard you clearly. Consequently, the following measures shall be taken to accelerate progress to achieving the objectives stated by the people. Number 1, I will be proposing amendments to the Evidence Act and the Criminal Procedure Code, among other necessary legislative amendments to all statutes relating to corruption, to expedite investigations and prosecution of corruption and economic crimes cases, and provide for their conclusion within 6 months. We shall also be proposing amendments to the Witness Protection Act to overhaul the statutory and institutional framework to protect and incentivize whistleblowers. And institutional framework to protect and incentivize whistleblowers and enhance witness protection, making it easier and safer for citizens to come forward and report corruption as well as other criminal activities. Number 3, within 90 days, we shall propose amendments to the Public Finance Management Act and Public Procurement and Disposal Acts to overhaul the institutional and operational framework of public procurement, which has been identified as the epicenter of corruption, conflict of interest, and abuses of office in the public sector, with a view to deploying digital infrastructure within the next 6 months. The aim of this measure is to provide an open and transparent public procurement platform which gives open, real-time, and end-to-end public visibility of public procurement from advertisement to award of contract and to whom it is awarded and what amount the people of Kenya will pay. Number 4, I have engaged with the parliamentary leadership and asked Parliament to expeditiously pass the Conflict of Interest Bill with the explicit caveat that I shall veto any bill enacted if it does not establish the highest bar with respect to accountability, integrity, and anti-corruption. I will make full use of the power given to me under Article 115 of the Constitution to make sure that the bill meets the appropriate standards set out in the original bill. Number 5, while fully respecting the independence of the national justice, law, and order institutions, and pursuant to a commitment to consult and collaborate in leveraging their institutional capabilities in effective, expeditious, and conclusive investigations in respect of all active cases, it is essential for these institutions to provide a time frame to the people of Kenya, because that is what the people of Kenya want, within which proceedings shall be concluded, and the same timelines clearly communicated to the public. Number 6, about 400 billion shillings is spent on tax expenditure every year, especially on VAT refunds, a process that is largely opaque and with limited accountability. Within 90 days, I will be working with Parliament to provide a legislative and regulatory framework to make this process transparent, open, and accountable, with a view to reducing this huge public expenditure and direct savings from this exercise to the productive sectors of our economy. This is going to be a very important exercise of engaging Parliament in consultations with the people as to whether it is right for us to spend 400 billion Kenya shillings every year collected from the people of Kenya to pay a few companies on matters of VAT refund. Number 7, the government will also work with Parliament to tighten legislation to reduce and eliminate imports of goods and products already manufactured in Kenya, so as to promote our value addition, our manufacturing, and industrialization program in our quest to create more jobs, create more opportunities, and create wealth in our nation. We must have a national conversation as to whether we want to be a supermarket for products from other countries, or we want to produce products that we already have manufacturing capacity in Kenya. In my last address to the nation, I undertook to consult a broad spectrum of stakeholders from all sectors, levels, and regions in order to constitute a broad-based government. In line with this undertaking, I will be forwarding additional names to Parliament for vetting prior to appointment based on the understanding of the Cabinet's essential role in driving the transformational agenda that makes Kenya a better, more just, and more prosperous nation for all of us. Once constituted, the new cabinet will steward our transformation agenda that is already in place in providing effective and efficient public services, expanding opportunities for employment and wealth creation, and creating a tide that lifts every boat. Our collective ambition is to turbocharge the performance of our economy to achieve our universal health coverage, which ensures that no one is left behind or impoverished on account of healthcare costs.